It's good evening to you and welcome to the special edition broadcast of the 55th National Elective Conference of the ANC. Newly elected now, Secretary General Fikile Mbalula giving us a brief. It's going to be a very short brief, but ended up being a brief that has now gone on for close to an hour and a half. Talking, of course, of a number of issues that he has raised. The first that comes to mind, of course, is that the briefing by officials is going to take place tomorrow. So the top 7, I believe, tomorrow will be coming to speak to members of the media. President Ramaphosa will be, of course, giving the closing remarks, and him as the Secretary General will be making the declarations. All this will be taking place tomorrow, but there will be a continuation of briefings, as you're hearing there, as the various commissions are concluding their work, and they'll be briefing on what those resolutions are. But some rather interesting things coming out of there, which I am going to be ventilating and getting some analysis on with political analyst Dr Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who joins us now for reaction on the media briefing by the new ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula. Dr. Breakfast, good evening. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's quickly begin here, which is something that is certainly coming out of this briefing, and maybe you will give me your thoughts on it. Vincent Magwenya, the spokesperson of the president, seemingly has gotten himself in a little bit of trouble. Pulemabi, they're saying, I did speak to him, but he was defiant, and we will be reporting this matter to the president. So it seems he has been communicating, of course, as the government spokesperson in an ANC event, which seemingly would have put him in a lot of trouble. I'm sure he did know that, but why would you think he would have gone ahead with it?
Well, Tabo, I've seen those interviews that he has had, but I presume that he must have had them in his capacity as a spokesperson of government. I do think, though, that it's important to separate between the state and the ruling party. It's not the same thing. Despite the fact that the ANC is the one that is leading government, but I think we should not cloud issues. But I don't know what is it that he might have said that did not sit well with some ANC officials and so on.
Yeah, I think it's got to do with just generally the protocol of communication and how the ANC would like things done, which I suppose takes us to the point that Fikile Mbalula was talking about around discipline, saying now he's the new chief in town, or Manjingelane, so to speak, saying this thing of tweeting at midnight is going to stop. And I suppose he says it will start with him. But this idea of NEC members insulting the president, NEC members contradicting policies of the ANC publicly with him at the helm, it is now going to stop. Any reason why we should believe him?
Kabo, the ANC in the past has had a challenge because we've seen previously the SG of the ANC, the outgone one, crossing swords with the president in public on a number of occasions. And he's on record also having said that he was giving them 5 years, despite the fact that he was part of that particular leadership. And I think that kind of posture has not set well with some people, because it has given an impression that the ANC as an organization does not function as a unit. And that tension has also had a spillover effect to the whole country. So I think the beauty of this NEC now, or the advantage of this NEC now, is that there seems to be a synergy between the incumbent Ramaphosa and also the SG. And I think that is a strategic advantage of this leadership in terms of enhancing the notion of unity. But it's still early days to, predict that the ANC will be able to do well in future, given the fact that there's a lot of challenges lying ahead.
Yeah, we'll talk to those challenges, but is this leadership not making a mistake to think that just because they were victorious to an extent at this conference, that the fight back campaign has now retreated?
However, the problem, in my opinion, is that the people who are vehemently and fundamentally opposed to Ramaphosa, we must bear in mind that at some point they were in power. The forces of RET at some point were in power. And in politics, it's not good to lose political power. because when you lose political power, it also means that you are losing political protection. Let's face it, more often than not, those who are aligned to the dominant faction in the ANC, they tend to be exempted from prosecution. But also when you lose political power, you are also losing access to economic resources. So I think that has created a scope for the backlash that we have seen. I think some people never accepted President Ramaphosa from day one when he was elected, even in 2017, and they have been vehemently opposed to him. So now you have an SG like Mbalula, who strikes me at a glance as a person who's going to crack the whip. He has said that himself in public, that he will not allow ill discipline. He's on point, because ill discipline does pose a threat to the stability of the organization. But at the same time, you have to be circumspect, because you can't discipline people willy-nilly as if you are suppressing, divergent opinions.
Yeah, I wanted us to expand a little bit on that and what they are saying around democratic centralism. Of course, the question put to him around the Constitutional Court ruling on the fact that when you are in Parliament, of course, you're not there to represent your party, but to represent the people. And how do you then institute that discipline in that particular context? But Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast giving us some analysis following that briefing by the incoming Secretary General of the African National Congress, Fikile Mbalula. Will continue in a moment. Stay with us. This national conference still carrying on, wrapping up things from what we're hearing, at least by tomorrow. And at this particular point, the nominations and the voting, I believe, for the additional members, the NEC members, currently going on, as well as the discussions on the adoption of the various reports coming from the commissions is currently going on. All that to try and wrap up this conference all in time. But some rather interesting things coming out from that briefing that I suppose set the tone of the kind of challenges that this incoming leadership is going to have to deal with. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast giving us some political analysis there. So, Dr. Breakfast, let's look at that question of discipline again, and you see some rather interesting challenges in terms of the issues that are already there that they're going to have to deal with. The first thing that I suppose is particularly interesting coming out of this briefing is that Batabile Dlamini has been allowed to contest. So she's back in. And this seemingly is a decision that was taken by the NEC, and they seem to have explained the situation to the Electoral Committee, and the Electoral Committee has accepted that in terms of Rule 25, they have to be very consistent in how they are applying this disqualification of Batabile Dlamini. We don't have a clear explanation as to exactly how they came to that conclusion, but it seems that's what they have done. But at the same time, then you have Andile Lungisa, whose matter is apparently still ongoing, has not been resolved. And at the same time, you hear Fikile Mbalula feeling very strongly that those who defied party line in Parliament will need to be dealt with, something that the Integrity Commission would need to deal with. I suppose the question of consistency, once again, is going to come up here.
No, of course. I mean, what is source for the goose is source for the gander. What you apply on the left-hand side, in the same way, you must also apply it on the right-hand side in order to strike a balance. It's good to hear that Mama Batabile Dlamini has been allowed to stand for any position in the conference that is underway, because it didn't make sense in the beginning why Tony Yengeni and herself were prevented from standing for whichever position that they were planning to stand for, because it came across as if it was a patch, and also the timing in which those announcements were made. But of course, another person that has been seen to be problematic has been Andile Lungisa. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know, there are some issues that are underpinning some decisions about people's discipline. I hope that the ANC doesn't come across to be patching people who are holding different views from the views that are held by the leadership.
As far as the question then of the discipline of past leaders and how they interact with the current leadership, How do you think they will approach this? Particularly here, I'm referring to the legal ramblings between Jacob Zuma as well as the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying we want to ensure that there are good relations and we will pursue a political process. We will not interfere with the legal processes, but we'll pursue a political process, almost saying there is this unwritten rule in the ANC in terms of how past leaders and current leaders should be engaging with one another. Do you see that as a battle that he will be able to win, as the SG is saying, it is my job? In fact, I heard in another interview, Zizi Kodwa saying, as a matter of fact, the incoming SG will need to take a trip to Nkandla and go and have tea with former President Jacob Zuma.
Thabo, I missed your question. Can you kindly repeat it?
Okay, I'm saying the legal ramblings between Jacob Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa, something that Fikile Mbalula says he will need to address, saying he will try and pursue a political process, almost implying that there is an unwritten rule in the ANC that is understood by the ANC how former leaders and current leaders should be relating to one another.
Yeah, Thabo, I must say that I was taken aback by the turn of events on that score. I did not see that one coming. And also the timing of that decision was, taken at the 11th hour, or, those developments were communicated in public at the last minute, just before the conference kicked off. So it gave an impression that, in my opinion, that former President Zuma is trying to hold back the incumbent from, becoming a president again. That's the impression that I got, because why on earth would you wait until at the 11th hour to do that? So I think there was a rationale behind that, but that was a project gone wrong because, things did not go according to plan. But I think this approach, former President Zuma is one of my favorite politicians, but at a strategic level, I think he doesn't realize that by being on the offensive, he is actually making President Ramaphosa to come across as a victim, because a lot of people are going to sympathize with him. And also, President Ramaphosa has been very strategic by not responding out of anger when former President Zuma is showcasing some kind of a disrespect to him. For instance, he walked in the venue while President Ramaphosa was on the podium. Why on earth would he do that? That is some kind of a disrespect. And also it doesn't demonstrate a maturity. Of all people, you don't expect that to be showcased by someone who was once a president of the country. So what I'm saying is that at a strategic level, I hold the view that is a miscalculation, because also he is making people to even question the motivation behind the Palapala allegations against the president when he continues unleashing these attacks on him.
Do you see a situation where there is a political solution? Because on the road to campaigning, I think Dr. Zelim also said, for example, the fact that they sent former President Jacob Zuma to prison is something that the ANC must engage with, to say, was it necessary to send such an old man to prison? Could there have not been a political solution to the problem? I suppose, once again, the ANC saying we will try and seek a political solution to the clear rift that is existing between the former leader Jacob Zuma and current leader Cyril Ramaphosa.
Well, the ANC in the past has always held a view that it doesn't want to intervene in the workings or in the operations of the judiciary. And I think it needs to be consistent in that regard. I understand that the issue of private prosecution by former President Zuma is politically inspired, the timing of it, and so on. So I doubt very much if they are going to smoke the peace pipe and let bygones be bygones or sing Kumbaya, given the fact that former President Zuma is determined in terms of holding President Ramaphosa accountable.
Now, Dr. Professor, I don't know if you heard this answer, but Fikile Mbalula seemingly having a difficulty, I suppose, to an extent, explaining why there is a lack of geographic diversity as far as this top seven. Making a call pretty much to say, we are from Free State, that one is from Eastern Cape, that one is from Limpopo. But by and large, they are all pretty much based here in Gauteng, and that's where they are currently exercising their politics. Do you see a situation where the ANC will now become too urban-centric, in a sense that somebody who is in Nkandla will not be able to identify with this national leadership?
Thabo, besides the issue that you are raising, another matter that I think might be a matter of national concern is the fact that the top 7 does not reflect the racial composition of the country. There are no black people, there are no white people there are no colored people there are no Indian people there. Whilst the ANC, on the other hand, purports to be standing for the philosophical tradition of non-racialism. So as it stands, the top 7, I think, goes against those ethos of non-racial. So that's another thing that the ANC needs to address, maybe in future. But yes, the fact that the top 7 also does not reflect, the demographics of the country in terms of where those people come from is a matter of concern. But I think it's no big deal, because I think Uncle Gweremantaj comes from the Eastern Cape, and I think there's someone from Limpopo. Mbalula also comes from Free State, but maybe Gauteng has an upper hand on matters of leadership.
Yeah, so certainly. And speaking of, for example, Gwede coming from the Eastern Cape, does he still find relevance in that constituency? You think that those people would feel that it's a leader that they can certainly identify with? And then what does that say, for example, of the absence of a leader from KwaZulu-Natal, where we know that during this campaign, it was difficult, for example, to put it plain bluntly, for President Cyril Ramaphosa to go there because of this antagonistic relationship that does exist between him and former President Jacob Zuma and the people of KZN.
Thabo, this is a very sensitive matter. But I think as a country, we are one happy big family. But like any other family, we've got issues, we've got contradictions that we need to address, because there's no family or no country that is perfect. I just think that we need to transcend beyond political identity, in particular, ethnic classification. This thing of being attached to ethnic, categories. I think we need to transcend beyond that if we want to enhance social cohesion. I am not convinced by the argument that the electoral outcomes are not fair and square simply because there is nobody from this or from that province. I think that is a weak argument.
Let's look at these two things now, seemingly again being kicked for touch, Palapala and digital vibes. The Integrity Commission seemingly still have not come up, maybe they have, or we're just not being told, with a report on these particular matters, saying, well, this incoming NEC will still need to deal with this. Are they just merely simply procrastinating, delaying the inevitable here?
I think there has been a slow pace of responsiveness by the ANC insofar as the Palapala matter is a concern. But my view is that I've got mixed feelings about the issue in question, because there are things that are straightforward in that report, namely the fact that according to section, I think 96 of the Constitution, you cannot undertake paid work while you are holding public office. That is straightforward. And the president did the exact opposite of that, because he did confirm that he is involved in a business of selling animals. And the second issue is that the president did not report the theft that had happened on his compound. And even on that score, I think he is at fault. But on the other hand, I don't think that the report is based on a substantive evidence. It is based on a hearsay. And I think maybe the president was advised accordingly in private to take the report to the Constitutional Court, because he could have taken it maybe to a lower court just to test the waters. So I think maybe he is fully convinced that things will go according to plan. But at the same time, the possibility that he might lose that case is also not far-fetched. So there are many possibilities. But if he loses the case, I think that will be a nail in the coffin. It will mean that he has to step down. as a president of the country, and also the president of the ANC.
A question was put to Fikile Mbalula around the structures of the organization, some which are now just interim structures or task teams, so to speak, as well as branches and provinces that have not held their conferences. It seems, from what he is saying, for example, the Free State, the Western Cape, they must go to conference. That's as him coming in, there will no more be interim structures. Now, people have been very critical of this particular top six that has gone out to say they deliberately dissolved those structures to render them ineffective, the leagues and so on and so forth. For him to say that now they're going to be functional, I don't know whether it's something that would point to that particular fact that, well, when the other top six was there, they deliberately didn't do work to reconstitute those particular structures.
Well, Thabo, I think on the whole, or by and large, the membership of the ANC has shrunk. And also the branches of the ANC have been in disarray. And that has posed a threat to the ANC in terms of its electoral performance. No wonder the ANC got below 50% last year. I think if we had had general elections, it would have meant that they would have lost power. So that is a matter of concern for the ANC. But the other argument is that these branches are sometimes disbanded on purpose, simply because some people in those branches are holding views that are contrary to the views that are held by HQ. I mean, we've seen that also with the leagues. So it's something that the ANC has to address going forward. The other issue is that the victory by Ramaphosa will mean nothing if the ANC loses power in the upcoming general elections. That too is not far-fetched, given the fact that the ANC doesn't function as a unified force.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit and Fikile Mbalula's capacity to be able to do that. He says, my time in government is up. Those are his words, actually. He says, my time in government actually is up. Now, it's just up to the president to decide whether I go now or whether I go after the January 8th. But my time in government is up. I need to go to Lutuli House to fix, one, the dented image of the ANC, to restore the ANC to being a campaigning party that is dynamic. Can he do that? Does he have the pedigree to be able to pull that off?
No, I think in theory he has identified the problem of the ANC. I mean, effective therapy can only occur when there's a proper diagnosis. So he has been able to diagnose the problem, but now what is left is a prognosis. So I think he comes across to be more matured now in terms of how he interacts with the media. But I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But I think one of the major problems of the ANC is the quality of members of the ANC in terms of how they engage with the policies of the ANC and so on. You can't be a comrade without having political education. So the ANC, because if the ANC can address the issue of political education, I think also by so doing it will be able to address the issue of corruption in terms of what the ANC stands for. Because if you behave as a politician, as a member of the ANC in a way that is unethical, it implies that you don't know what the ANC stands for in terms of the philosophical outlook of the ANC. So the issue of political education is extremely important, and I think that is one of his responsibilities in terms of making sure that qualitatively the ANC has solid comrades, but also quantitatively that the ANC also grows as well. Yeah,
talking about ANC members that understand ANC positions. For example, one of the questions put to him was around one of the, I think if it's not the Secretary General of Limpopo, it's the chairperson of a region there, who says they don't support the just transition. And Fikile says, I'm not sure what he's talking about, because just transition is the posture and the position of the ANC on how the energy is going to be approached going forward. It's just the pace of doing things as far as doing away with coal that is up for discussion. I mean, it's such things that reveal to us either deliberately or maybe just it's a question of ignorance that members of the ANC are not quite clear on where the ANC stands on particular things such as just transition.
Tabo, I've said this before, I will say it again. The ANC calls itself a disciplined force of the left, and it subscribes to a Marxist and Leninist organizational model which demands party discipline, that when a decision has been made at the highest decision-making body, all and sundry has to abide by that. And if you speak against a decision like that is made by the majority, then that is tantamount to ill discipline. Then the ANC has to crack the whip on matters of that regard. So I think Balula is on point there in terms of saying that people who are ill-disciplined, they have to be shown the door, or they have to be brought to book. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation whereby the ANC is faced with two threats. It is faced with a threat from within, and also it is faced with a threat from outside. And the ANC cannot afford that, given the fact that elections are just around the corner. So I think he is within his right in terms of addressing that issue. I don't think that he was off the mark.
Dr Ntsikelelo Breakfast, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for helping us this evening. That is political analyst Dr Ntsikelelo Breakfast, following the briefing that has been concluded now by the incoming Secretary General of the African National Congress.